When I played the Secret of Mana HD remake about 4 months ago, I thought it was good, but flawed and still needed a lot of work. But in just a very short amount of time, they have improved it immeasurably, and it has exceeded all expectations as we get closer to launch. So now, let's answer some questions and I'll talk about all of the changes. So I'm going to go straight in and answer questions first of all, and there are a bunch here to go through, and then I'll talk about some of the things that I noticed and some of the changes that have been made, and just things that people didn't ask about, but I think are definitely worth mentioning. So let's get straight into the questions. First is from a Kevin Dupoy. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing everybody's name, I'm doing my best. Okay, so he says some stuff just about, his Secret of Mana really being loved by him, and then he was talked about hit stun. So players used to be stunned when hit for 3 seconds, and you could basically be stun locked by enemies, and also magic spamming, and that's the same sort of thing. You could stun lock enemies, even bosses, or you could get stun locked yourself. Now, as far as the hit stun goes, when you get hit by a monster, you aren't stunned for 3 seconds now. You are stunned for a little while, but you do have the option of actually doing something. You have the option to move much sooner. It is around 1 second, I believe. Now, enemies get stunned based on how much damage you deal to them. So if you obviously hit them at 100% power, they do get stunned for the full 3 seconds or somewhere close to that. But if you only hit them at 20% power and you do like 7 damage or something like that, they get stunned for a much shorter period of time. So it is harder to stun lock regular enemies, but it is still possible. As far as magic spamming goes, I didn't get far enough to get access to magic. We made it all the way past the boss in Gaia's Navel, and you get the second party member. So I didn't make it far enough to get a lot of magic to spam magic and test that for you. I also couldn't get an answer from Square, but I'm unsure if it's planned to still be in there or if they've changed some things, because they have enhanced combat a lot since I first played the game, and they've enhanced it from the original as well. The other thing Kevin asked was different or abandoned animations, and the dancing was fixed, and he means that the dancing NPCs in shops are now back. They do dance, as you can see on screen. But the evasion animation used to be Randy flipping away from attacks, and now he basically just steps back. I believe in this latest build, he sort of does do a little animation. It's not a flipping one, but he sort of does like a fade sort of animation where he sort of fades out a little bit to notify that he's evaded the attack. It's definitely not as cool as maybe flipping away from attacks, but this build is still not the final build, and I am told there are still more changes to come, and obviously little animation changes and enhancements and that kind of thing are going to come quite late into development, because there are usually placeholder stuff there up until they get all the mechanics down. And then Emmanuel asks, is it possible to remove the cutscene voices and just leave the text? So there is a sound mixer where you can turn the voiceover all the way down to 0 and leave the other stuff up if you like, but you can't really keep them on for not cutscenes. And as I say, there are still some changes to be made, but at the moment it doesn't appear as though you can just take voices out of cutscenes and add in subtitles. It seems as if you are meant to play it with the sound and the voiceover. Eric, so I'm just going to start saying people's first names. Eric asks, I hope it is more complete, but I still have 3 main questions. Is attack magic still OP in the game? As I said before, I didn't get up to the part where you got a lot of magic, so I'm unsure. There have been changes, so it wouldn't surprise me if there has been some balancing in that area. Bosses, I saw the revamped Spiky Tiger fight, looks more fair, but I'm worried about the Biting Lizard Snapdragon fights. I didn't get to play that far, unfortunately. I made it past Tropicalo, and from what I can see, the strats that you could do in the original still work for this remake. So for the Tropicalo, I did that just with Randy, and I didn't go and get the other party member first, and I basically just charged up his weapon attack, and when it popped up, I hit the charge, and I think it only took 3 charge attacks or so to get him down. So I imagine there has been some balancing done, because they have specifically mentioned that combat and some of that stuff has been balanced for just a better player experience, but I can't comment on that specifically because I didn't play that far. Arctic Flare 22, does holding L or R while charging a weapon still hold the direction currently faced while moving? Is 4 still the max on recovery items, and is there screen scrolling when AR controlled characters are off screen? So L and R while charging a weapon, yes, it still holds in the direction you are currently facing, as far as I could tell. Is 4 still the max on recovery items? Yes and no. By default, 4 is still the max on recovery items. There was actually an option in the main options menu, in the actual settings menu, that you could put the max items to 8 or to 12. I did set it to 12, but the max still remained 4 as far as I could see in game. So it looks like it's definitely a planned feature. It just hasn't made it into the current build yet. Or the actual implementation of it hasn't made it into the current build yet. And is there screen scrolling when AI controlled characters are off screen? As far as I could tell, yes. I had limited time with the second part with my second party member, but it seemed as if the screen scrolling just continued on. I don't know about whether that will still be the case with a actual player 2 if you're going to play local multiplayer. Froggo776, is it 3-player co-op online and offline? As far as I could see, we only have local multiplayer at the moment. I know that there were plans for online multiplayer, but I could not get an answer off Square whether or not we will have online co-op for launch or not, or if it's even coming anymore. But it's still up there as planned as far as I know. An option for classic sprites instead of 3D models? No, not that I could see. It's still all new models. Old 16-bit OST option. This is something I can say that yes, you can switch at any time between the new orchestrated versions and also the original 16-bit original soundtrack. You can do that in the settings menu at any time. Does it retain Ted Woolsey's original script with some polish to its translation? There has definitely been changes to the translation, and the changes weren't apparent in the first build of the game. When I first played this, like a couple of months ago, the translation looked identical to the original. In this new one, there have actually been some changes. There are some really noticeable changes. For instance, just a quick one, when you head to the temple and you get the spear given to you, she says in the original something like, "Take this spear." And like, that's it. That's just the only good. She's like, yeah, just have the spear. And that's pretty much it. In the latest build of this HD remake, she actually did a thing saying, I don't want you going out there only with a rusty old sword. This is something that I've got, a spear, and you can restore its power too. So it's actually, it seems as if there has definitely been tweaks and polish to translation, but also because there were memory limits back in the day for the original. There were obviously a lot of text you had to cut down or just shorten or just get straight to the point. There seems to be a lot more flavor text now and a lot more, just more elaboration. It makes a bit more sense, really. So Backsliders from Reddit asks, what is this? And he has linked this picture, which is a picture of the face of one of the characters, which, admittedly doesn't look that good, but if you have a look at the original, he has a pretty stupid face. I mean, these characters are not the most brilliantly modeled, even back in their sprite times. And something that has been changed significantly, which you may have seen in the other video, is the graphics. They have had maybe a shader change or a lighting change or a shadow change, something like that, but everybody seems to be a little bit more defined now. Features are more defined. Everybody's more vibrant. It does look better now. He still looks a little silly, but, it's a silly game. At the end of the day, what do you guys expect? And this is Backsliders asking something to Square, can you lower the vibrancy on the game? The original color is a big part of its charm, blah, blah, blah. The vibrancy is possibly even more vibrant now than when it was when I first played it a couple of months ago, but I think that's a good thing. I think the game looks significantly better now than it did in the first build that I played. Sharebear42019 from Reddit asks, will it keep all the weapon spells and co-op mechanic, online play and local play? I'm pretty excited for the game, but something that's holding you back is the art direction. As I just said before, the art direction appears to, or at least the graphics, the implementation of the new art direction appears to be a lot better now. Everybody looks better and is more defined. As far as I could tell, all of the weapons, spells, and local co-op stuff is there, and online play, as I say, is still planned as far as I know, but I couldn't get a definitive answer on whether it's going to be there for launch or not. Albafika from Reddit asks, I haven't seen any gameplay, but I would like to know how fluid the multiplayer is. I loathe how most bosses would be pinned down by spamming menu magic, made everything boring for multiplayer friends. I only got to play the tiniest amount of multiplayer, and it was local. It seemed to be just fine. As far as mechanics go, as far as moving around and interacting, that seemed all just absolutely fine. There didn't seem to be any issues there. As I said previously in this Q&A, I didn't get up to the part where magic was, so I don't know if you're still going to be able to just spam bosses with magic and stun lock them. But they have made a lot of balance changes, so I imagine that won't be there. Alright, at least I hope. And if it isn't there, then hopefully they have balanced some of the bosses that are extremely difficult if you don't do that. Fabio Rodriguez from Reddit asks, I don't know if I'm late to ask, but ask him about a Switch version. Now, this is something that I did ask, and obviously, I got no answer from Square whatsoever. Apparently, there is no Switch version planned. This was always on the PS4, and it is surprising to me that it isn't coming to the Switch, because we were chosen not to get the Mana collection that Japan got either for the Switch. They got the original 3 Mana games in a collection on the Switch, and it has basically been said that that's definitely not coming west at this stage. So it is strange to me that they haven't decided to at least make a Switch version of this, but who knows, it may be coming. It might depend on how this version does on the PS4 and a bunch of other factors, but at the moment, as far as I know, no Switch version. And Emperor Octavian also asked about an Xbox One version, and again, that is nothing that is planned at the moment. Now, that really doesn't surprise me that it isn't coming to the Xbox One, and probably won't, because this is, a niche Japanese game. Maybe not so niche, it has a big following, but it's still a very old JRPG, and JRPGs generally don't do well on the Xbox platform, especially not in Japan. So probably not, and I couldn't get an answer either way. And Pidridgeby from Reddit asks, there were 2 orbs missing in the original game, axe and bow I think. Will there exist in the remake, or will you be stuck trying to get these random drops in the final dungeon like the original? I did ask specifically about this, and because I was not asking the developers, I was only asking Square. They tried to get an answer for me, which they seemingly couldn't, or not in time for this video at least, so I'm unsure. There has been a lot of enhancements, there has been a lot of quality of life changes, there has been a lot of balancing. I assume that they will, do something like, they will fix up little issues like this that have been known for a long time. I assume that, but I can't tell you definitively either way. Wolfram Eater from Reddit asks about if the remake sells well, is there any plan for the remake of Secret of Mana 2 or Seiken Densetsu 3? Look, I did ask, and again, I got no answer. It's just going to be a common theme for these types of questions when you ask Square about this kind of stuff. But it's something that definitely wouldn't surprise me. They didn't announce, a remake of the whole series or a remake of multiple games. They just announced the Secret of Mana remake, which appears to be, the most loved, or at least the most known to fans in the West. So it's something that wouldn't surprise me that if this does sell, at least to their expectations, or if it sells above their expectations, they'll definitely look at other games in the franchise. But I can't tell you either way. Square are very tight-lipped about that stuff and having those plans. It wouldn't surprise me if there were, initial plans to remake the entire series, including the one we didn't get, but it will depend on whether or not this sells to expectations, or does to their expectations at the very least. Alright, so that's all for the questions, and there are a bunch of things that I wanted to say that weren't asked in questions. And I wanted to reiterate the OST, the actual soundtrack, being able to switch between the orchestrated and the original. It's really cool. It's there, and it's something that a lot of people that didn't like the new orchestrated sound. I actually like the new orchestrated tracks. I don't see what's a problem with them. They're literally the old tracks, but orchestrated with newer music, so it doesn't sound like a chiptune. But you can change that at any time, and I'm just going to show you here the difference between the two, and you can judge for yourself. The other thing I wanted to emphasize was the improvement on the graphics. You might have seen the other video that I put up, which is just a quick graphics comparison, but there's definitely been some changes there that make everything look better. It might be a minor change with lighting or shadows or something like that, but just looking at the difference, just Randy's nose. It wasn't even apparent that he had a nose in the first footage that sort of come out a couple of months ago, and now it's like night and day. I think the improvements are vast. The game looks great now, and there are definitely things that were missing in that first build that have come along, like the dancing NPCs and things like that. So it seems like they do actually care about what this HD remake looks like. They're trying to stay somewhat faithful to the original as far as sprites and everything go, but it has to, if you're going to remake this, you can't make it like a big full it can't be like Nier Automata, because it's not going to be the same game then. It has to have this sort of the isometric top-down-ish view, or that it has to have this stuff to be Secret of Mana. So I think they're doing pretty good with the restrictions that they have in terms of gameplay. I actually think the game has its own charm, and it will stand alongside the original sprites and that kind of art. I don't think that it's necessarily better, the remake, but I also don't think it's significantly worse in any way. I think it has its own charm. Some other changes: combat, just hit detection in general is much better. Combat feels more fluid. Everything is in the game now, so charge attacks are in the game, which they weren't when I played it a couple of months ago, and alternate weapons are in the game, and all of that kind of thing is from the original is in the game now. There have been some changes with, when you do get hit, you aren't just stunned for the full amount of time. Enemies aren't stunned for a full 3 seconds. If you hit them with, a tiny amount of damage, they're stunned depending on how much damage you do to them. And just in general, everything feels tighter, everything feels better, everything just feels a lot more fluid. There are some other cool things like the audio options in there, so you have a bunch of different sliders for the mixer, so you can turn voices down, turn voices up. And on the topic of voices, the original music is not the only thing to make it in the game. You also have the full Japanese voiceover that you can change to at any time. So that is something that's pretty cool, and that includes for cutscenes and every NPC in the game, because as far as I can tell, every NPC in the game is voiced in both English and Japanese, and you can change to the Japanese voiceover whenever you like. And it doesn't even appear to be DLC, it's just in the game, it's in the settings, and you can do it there. And I'll just give you a quick comparison now of the two.
I can hear rumbling from somewhere even deeper underground than we are. Sounds like someone digging.
ここよりもずっと地底の方で音がすんだ。誰かが穴でも掘ってんだべか。
And there is one sort of last thing. There is a costumes option now in the game, so you can put Randy and the crew in a Moogle suit or a tiger suit, I believe. So there are a couple of cool little extras there. The menu is a little bit more streamlined now. There were a couple little issues when I first played it a while back. Everything now just appears to be a lot tighter. I would say that this is pretty much ready for launch, but I'm told there are still enhancements to be made and a few tweaks and changes to be done before the launch build. So I would expect this game to be excellent because what I played of this latest build, which was, a couple of hours, it was past Tropicalo, it feels really good. It feels really good. It's really fun to play. Everything feels tighter. Everything feels more fluid. I think it looks really good now, and there are plenty of options in the game for people who, don't like the music or don't like the voiceover, or it's just really good now. I'm excited for it. It's something that, I wasn't too hyped for either way. I wasn't probably going to buy it day one, and I wasn't going to be, too excited about this remake. But now I'm actually looking forward to it. I think it's going to be the better way to play this game because the translation changes, the translation fixes and enhancements and just the elaboration in general on the English text is going to be something that you will probably want to experience as a longtime fan. This original script obviously had to have limitations due to memory size, and now that kind of thing is a lot better in terms of getting the original script's vision correct. It's just a lot better to read. There's a lot more interesting stuff. I think this is going to be good for both original fans and people brand new to the series. I think that's all for now, guys. This has been a long video. I thank you for staying with me. Hopefully I have answered your questions, or hopefully I have alleviated some of your worries. A lot of things that people were worried about when I first commented on the remake have been fixed, have been changed or balanced or enhanced. So it seems as if they have been listening at least to fans on the internet, or they have been doing their own work to get this up to a standard for people who know the original and love the original. And also, just to bring it up to standard as a game that is coming out in the year 2018. If you have any more questions, don't be afraid to pop them down into the comment section. I will try and answer them. If you have anything specific that I can't answer, I will try and get the answer off Square, but as I say, it's very difficult to get anything out of them in terms of very specific gameplay things, and also about releases and plans for the series and that kind of thing. I can't really get that stuff, but I'll do my best to get answers for you. Hit the like button if you like this video, check out my Patreon, and all that good stuff, and I'll see you all soon.